Hello, Buccaneers, and welcome back to another episode of Buck's Books. As always, it is I, your beloved protagonist, Buck, and today I would like to talk to you about a classic called The Agony and the Ecstasy by Irving Stone. First and foremost, this is an absolute triumph of nominative determinism, right? So what that means, for those of you who don't collect stupid words like I do, is it's the tendency for the name of something to turn into a Jungian joke, like it's been written by Kojima, right? So like Goldman Sachs being a finance company that makes a ton of money, that's nominative determinism. It's like a pun, but like life imitates art sort of pun. They didn't intend for it to be a pun. So imagine someone with the last name of Holmes, and this individual would likely go into real estate, but in the event that they did not, they may align themselves with the sort of cultural understanding of Sherlock Holmes, in which they would be predictive and shrewd and tend to deduce stuff about an individual's hidden intentions. Wouldn't that be wild? So, like, the punchline is the name in nominative determinism. And the guy who wrote the book is named Irving Stone. And this turned out to be an example of it, because the entire book is about marble. I understand that when he wrote it, The Agony and the Ecstasy was likely referring to Michelangelo Buonarroti struggling with his artistic inclinations in a world that, by and large, does not value art to the same degree that he did. But in actuality, what the book wound up being about was the agony was how hard it was for him to find marble and source it and finance it. And the ecstasy was how excited he got when he finally did and got to breathe the dust till the point that it contributed to his death. So the whole thing, it's a biography of Michelangelo, and it follows his sort of trials and travails all over Italy. Spends most of its time in either Rome or Florence, which top-notch, best places in Italy as far as I'm aware. I haven't been to any other places in Italy, but I hear mixed reviews of Venice. And he kicked it in Pisa a lot. That's on the list. So it sort of tracks his efforts to progress into a career as into a career as Michelangelo. There's really no comparison. He was the guy. He was the best guy. He was the best sculptor. And everyone was trying to stop him from sculpting the whole way through. And that's the majority of what the book is about. From the jump, he's like, man, I want to carve marble so bad. And they're like, you can't, you're 8. You have to draw. And he's like, I don't want to draw. And I want to carve marble. And they're like, well, you're 8 and you're broke and we don't care what you want. So start drawing. And he's apprenticing to all of these established artists in Florence. I think it might have just been one. He got traded between 1 and 2. I will admit it's been like 2 months since I read this book, so some of it's a little fuzzy. If we have any Michelangelo scholars who want to correct my misstatements in the comments, be my guest. I'm not going to have feelings about that. There will be no emotions about that. There will be neither agony nor ecstasy about that. So he keeps trying to draw. He keeps trying to carve marble, and they keep making him draw. And eventually he draws so good that they let him carve not marble, but like bronze. And these little rinky-dink wax. They want him to carve clay. They want him to carve wax. And he's like, I don't want to carve any of these things. These things are junk. Marble is where the beauty is. He loves beauty so much, dude. You gotta let me get at the marble. And they're like, we can't let you get at the marble because you're too young and stupid. And he's like, but look at how good I carve things. I would be a spectacular marble carver. Now, meanwhile, his dad, real upset about all of this. He's like, no, you need to become a financier. You need to work in something immediately monetarily productive, right? That is Papa Buonarrote's main concern, is not being poor anymore. Now, he wasn't poor. But apparently it's because Grandpa squandered a lot of the family fortune, so he spent his life trying to rebuild it. And just clinging to every little ducat that he could get his hands on. And he's trying to sort of indoctrinate his family into doing the same thing. Being real miserly. Being real miserly in the name of being able to maintain the not only family honor, but sort of family status that they have climbed their way up to. So imagine his rage when he's confronted with his immensely talented and tremendously bullheaded young son who keeps going, not only will I not do anything productive or pragmatic, I want to be an artist. And not only an artist, I want to be the kind of artist that no one ever hires because marble's too expensive. And his dad's like, Michelangelo, I'm going to beat you. He just keeps beating him. Keeps saying, Michelangelo, I'm going to beat you until you make a good decision. Thing is, Michelangelo cannot be forced to make a good decision, for he's too artistic. So he continues over the course of the book to really double down and fight with whoever tries to compel him to make a decision that benefits anyone but Michelangelo, right? And I understand that this sounds biased. And I'm not biased against Michelangelo, he's Michelangelo. But you can empathize with the father. Because Florence was on the up and up because of El Magnifico, but only on the up and up for those who could afford to be on the up and up. The haves and the have-nots, same as it ever was. Right? So eventually Michelangelo proves to be so good at drawing things he didn't want to draw and making clay models that he didn't want to make that he starts to catch breaks, right? And one of those breaks is his nose, because he goes over the head of a local... I don't believe it took place in Florence. I believe it was Bologna. It's Bologna in Italian, right? I don't got to pronounce it Bologna. I'm American. I don't know that. I went to public school. I'm pretty sure it's Bologna. 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 Maybe an Italian will show up. Bologna is how it would be pronounced, like in Italian. He's over there, and there's like the preeminent Bologna stonecutter, who is the one who's typically contracted to make carvings out of stone. And naturally, they go over his head and give it to this weedy little, he's like 5'4", weedy little Michelangelo. And so the guy just knocks his face in, just breaks his nose. And apparently he will have the deformation of the broken nose for the rest of his life. So Michelangelo is eventually scooped up and brought into the palace of Lorenzo il Magnifico, Lorenzo de' Medici, where he is sort of kept on retainer to make pretty art projects for Lorenzo, because Lorenzo loves art. And the reason Lorenzo loves art is because Lorenzo was tremendously financially pragmatic. The reason Florence flourished under Lorenzo de' Medici is because he was so good with money and so good at playing politics. So once again, exactly the things that Michelangelo's dad is encouraging him to do, that Michelangelo is fighting him every step of the way on. So Lorenzo, glorying in his success, can afford not only to commission all of these just obscure pieces of art, but also to take on this by now 15, 12, 13, 14-year-old boy and bring him into the palace and have him live there and just make stuff whenever he wants. So from that point, it becomes one of those like, dark royalty, period piece dramas that you'll find on all of the streaming stations, like the Borgias, like that sort of thing. So he's just trying to navigate palace politics. And he's 13, and he's poor, and he's got a broken nose, and he refuses to bend on any of his convictions all the time, which people like Lorenzo, pretty much exclusively Lorenzo, and his daughter find very appealing. They like it a lot. So Michelangelo, he's sort of taking a run at Lorenzo's daughter, which that's gratitude for you, right? Bring them right into the palace, lives there. Terrible. But not ultimately very successful, once again, because of the palace politics. And then Lorenzo, oh my man, he gets got, he dies. Buonani, my good buddy. And then the rulership, I don't remember what kind of rulership it was, but the rulership starts to trade hands between the horrible family members, right, which eventually lead to the fall of the House of Medici. Ain't that just the way? And Michelangelo is sort of kicked out and sort of runs away to find his fortune. So his dad was begrudgingly on board with what Michelangelo was doing, because Michelangelo was bringing home mad ducats. He was getting like an allowance, and he was just giving all of the allowance straight to his family, and then his family was then either hoarding it or spending it on just plush ingredients, because that was his stepmom's whole deal. She loved to cook so much. It's her favorite, just cooking organic and cooking with all like the special imported fruit that you get at Wegmans that's shaped like a grenade. You know what I'm talking about? Like the sumo oranges, like that. She's all about that. She doesn't care if it costs 3 times as much as real oranges. Let's go. And now she can actually finance this standard of living because they're all living off their teenage son's largesse now that he's been taken as a ward of the House of Medici until Lorenzo dies. So he does a bunch of bopping around. He winds up in Rome trying to make it big there. And he's eventually offered the opportunity to start doing actual marble carvings. And this is where, man, he gets even worse, because he's like, the marble that you have around here, inferior. I need to go to a little hamlet in the middle of nowhere and extract the marble myself. Now, I'm not going to extract it. I am going to show the filthy laborers what my favorite marble is, and they're going to extract it for me, and then they're going to haul it back to Pisa, back to Rome, back to Bologna, back to wherever he was at the time. Like I said, it's been a couple months. And then I'm going to make it a masterpiece there. And everyone gave him a hard time about this, and it's right that they did, because that's an insane request. It's not even a request, it's a demand. It's an insane demand. But eventually he gets his way, and he makes these fantastic sculptures, and his big thing is the sculpture is already there. It's already in the marble, it's waiting. I just see what's in there and release it. Very artistic, beautiful, right? So he makes his masterpieces, and it follows sort of what happens to him from there. He has a couple of other saucy affairs, and falls in love with one of his models, who is a boy, but our boy Irving Stone kind of skimped over that part. That was not explored in anywhere near the same detail as any of his other affairs for some reason. And when he was young, it talks about how he learned about anatomy by breaking into where they stored bodies and just slicing them up. He's just sneaking into the church and slicing up the bodies, just cutting them up and looking at it and screwing with, just carrying lungs around. And he comes home and he's just soaked with gore, like 3-day-old body parts caking his little schmuck, right? And he comes home, he's like 13. And his dad is like, "Where were you all day?" And he was like, hawking. I was hunting with a bird. And his dad's like, "That better be lucrative." And that's most of what the book is. And then toward the end of the book, it becomes increasingly political. And it talks about how he doesn't like Leonardo da Vinci. There's a lot of, I believe there was almost a fist fight, but it never came to blows with Leonardo da Vinci. Irving Stone dunked on Leonardo da Vinci. You call him the high piping voice, and that he was just very, like, he's always wearing a dress. It's just, Irving Stone had a personal problem with Leonardo da Vinci of some kind. It's weird because I like Leonardo da Vinci. He has like a cool little museum in Rome. You can get like little models of stuff he built. You can get little catapults and stuff. So that was, and from there, I'm not going to ruin the end of it because it ties it up very nicely, and it's a beautiful book. I know I'm talking about it kind of flippantly, but that's because I talk about everything kind of flippantly and speak of love in hushed tones, you know? So, The Agony and the Ecstasy was one of those books that I was sorry that I put off reading for so long. And I put off reading it for so long because it was tremendously long. And you wouldn't think that he'd be able to cram so much action into a book about an artist. You know? But he did. And it's good. It's beautifully written. I will call it moving. And also educational, if only by accident. Well, like, obviously it was intentionally educational. But it was also accidentally educational because it kind of showed you the zeitgeist of Florence and of Italy in the 1400s and how, sort of like the dawning of the Renaissance, and how, yes, art is, when you think Renaissance, you think art, by and large. You think of what has come from it. But it was very secondary to all of the quote-unquote real stuff that was going on at the time. You know, art was a luxury. And when Florence was flourishing, there was a lot of time and money for that luxury, and he came up in that. So, as a result, he was kind of, he had a poor understanding. He had a poor understanding of why everyone else doesn't consider it as important as he does. You know, this was the pivot point on which his world turned. Art and its creation and the pursuit of beauty and modeling nature. You know, because Michelangelo was one of those artists who was not interested in trying to spin it his own way. He just wanted to reflect what reality looked like, because reality is a reflection of nature. And as Dante Alighieri said, nature is the art of God, you know? Michelangelo didn't think he could surpass that, which, I mean, it's a good place to draw your line, honestly. He also fought the Pope a lot. Toward the end of his life, he got commissioned by the Pope a lot, but, like, he would constantly push back against the Pope. And this was at a time where pushing back against the Pope was not just a comment that got ignored on Twitter. This was at a time where if you push back against the Pope could hang you. The Pope could have you disappeared into the Vatican dungeons. You'd be tortured to death, hoisted like Galileo was. Remember when they hoisted Galileo with the Strapato? So he was looking down the barrel of all that, and he didn't care. He's like, nah, none of my business. I got the marble. I got to get that marble, you know? And so the Agony is potentially the Strapatoing, and the Ecstasy is when he got commissioned to do something he kind of wanted to do by the church. That's the other thing. The church would tell him to do things, and he's like, no, I want to do my own thing. Just a fundamental misunderstanding of what the job was all the way through. But ultimately, when he was forced to compromise, he made some of the greatest works we have seen. You know, nothing has compared since. All right, he's Michelangelo. You know what I'm saying? There's one part of the book toward the end where he mouths off to the Pope so bad the Pope hits him with a stick in front of God and everybody. Like during a public address, he hits him with his cane, and Michelangelo just scurries away. And he's like, okay, I gotta skip town. I gotta get out of here. The Pope, everyone saw that happen. They're not gonna let this fly. The Pope is gonna kill me. I'm gonna get got by the Pope. I need to go. And he's frantically packing up his all of his supplies and what little money he has left, because he immediately blows it. He immediately destroys what money that he doesn't give to his family. And he's packing up his little catamite apprentice, and they're all going to flee town. And then one of the Pope's messengers shows up, and he's like, so the Pope isn't sorry, but he's not going to kill you, and he still needs you to finish your art project. And Michelangelo's like, are you for real? And he's like, yeah, you just don't... Stop pissing him off. And Michelangelo's like, okay. And then he does. And he makes a little art project. And then it went down in history as one of the greatest pieces of art known to man, blah, blah, blah. So, excellent book if you care about any of these things. Excellent book if you care about the Renaissance, or about art history, or about art currently, contemporary art, all of it, because he really did start a lot of our understanding of modern art. And beyond that, it's a good means of understanding the sort of substrate that the Western ideal of art came up in. Because he could do this because he was Michelangelo. But everybody else who's doing this is just tremendously annoying. And that's because they're not Michelangelo. So when you encounter one of those fart-sniffing, pretentious artists, and it upsets you, oh my God. That's how everyone always felt. All the time. The only difference is Michelangelo, being Michelangelo, got away with it. Whereas the dude who's like duct taping bananas to the wall of the gallery, he doesn't really have the same claim. All right. I don't know where I am right now. So I gotta pull up my All Trails map and get back on. Follow, all that stuff, all that good stuff. We got more to talk about. See you there.